again. I feel like Dew in the morning right now. Look, this is about where you stand, isn't it, Dew? About this far away. Which I never really understood. But actually now I'm doing it in my kitchen, I kind of get it. You know, because I'm used to this length. Because I used to do walk and talks all the time. Still do. But it's a bit different when you're this far away, isn't it? Look. I'm a bit cut off at the knee. Hope that's not too distressing for anybody's watching. Anyway, yeah, this is my kitchen here, as you can see. I was going to make a cup of tea, and I will in a minute. Just show you some things. This is a rabbit that I'm going to fix on a road sign down the road at some point. Listen very carefully. You can hear the sound of a dripping tap. I did try and fix it, but I failed miserably. I'm not, well, I got kind of used to it actually. I keep finding myself breathing in time to it when I sit at the table here. I find myself... Anyway, that's neither here nor there, is it really? So I'm thinking about community again. And I'm thinking about community and place. And I'm going to make a bit of a prediction here. And you're going to tell me this is daft, probably. You're probably saying, oh, that'll never happen. That's a ridiculous thing to think. But I'm going to suggest to you right now that in a few years' time, let's say 15 years' time, 20 years' time, people will look back, maybe a bit more, maybe 30 years' time, people will look back on this moment, this kind of 5-year period from 5 years, yeah, about now, this period, as a period of horror, internet horror, and callousness and carelessness and stupidity. And people will say, how could they have done that? How could they have done those things? How could people behave to one another like that? That's what I think. And the people I'm saying will be looked on in that way will be people like Google and YouTube and other sites. Now I'm not saying they're evil. You might want to think they're evil if you wish, but I don't think they're deliberately doing anything evil in regard to what I'm going to talk about. I just think that history will judge these moments differently than we are judging them at the moment. And to kind of contextualise that, I want to just take you back, way back, to late 1950s, early 1960s, and really through the 1960s, particularly in the UK at least, because that was a period here of massive kind of urban redevelopment. Lots of towns and cities were, neighbourhoods in towns and cities were changed dramatically, and what that often meant was the bulldozing of traditional housing and the placement of people away from those houses into better accommodation. Typically, people would be in the houses where the kind of house that I grew up in, small, 2 up, 2 down, outside toilet, no hot water, very poor facilities, no local facilities particularly, difficult area to police, you know, lots of kind of problems around sides of that, lots of economic difficulties. So those kind of neighbourhoods, which were undoubtedly a problem, slums, outskirts of Glasgow, outside of Manchester, Birmingham, obviously large parts of London, particularly East End. They're undoubtedly problem areas, and the solution at the time was we'll get the bulldozers in, we'll flatten this lot, and we'll take all these people and put them all individually into these nicely decorated and equipped blocks of flats, which is what tended to happen. And on an individual basis, the accommodation was certainly better. You know, the flats that people went into did have hot and cold running water, they had inside toilets, they had central heating in some cases, all that kind of stuff. But what was missing, of course, was community, right? People complained because there was no community in those places. They were saying that, yes, we lived in horrible, squalid conditions and a high crime rate and all those kind of things. But, you know, it was a community. We all knew each other. We all got along. We understood where we were. And now we're all disparate. We've all been atomised into these little cells, separate from one another. And our kids don't play in the street anymore. Nobody knows who anybody is. It's alienating. That was that sense. And people don't do that anymore. Town planning doesn't have that approach anymore. There's no attempt to build the radiant city, which I think was one of Corbusier's ideas. There's no suggestion to just level that neighbourhood down and take everybody out, and it doesn't really matter about who's living next to who. It's all individuals, right? That just doesn't figure in town planning anymore. People are much more sensitive to the fact that people live in groups and live in communities, and tend to be relatively small communities, under 150, the Dunbar number, you know, those kind of things come into play. People know each other. People have histories in these places. People have, you know, the streets that were pulled down are the streets that people walked down on their wedding day. The houses that were demolished were the houses they carried their new child into. You know, the bedroom that was laid flat was the bedroom that their grandmother died in. You know, things actually happened in these places, and people met and fell in love and fell apart, and all those things happened in those environments. And because no one was sensitive to that, that was all lost. I didn't mean to do anything bad, but something bad came out of it. And I'm going to suggest that that's exactly what's happening here and now. Here, on YouTube, for example, but other places as well, like YouTube, and right now. Because we're in communities, aren't we? I think that's what we're in communities. And when I say I think we're in communities, I don't just mean that you've got subscribers and I've got subscribers and I know your first name and you know mine. I think we're in a communities in more kind of anthropological ways than that. Because just as things happened in those towns, you know, people walked down the street on their wedding day and people did carry babies into their houses and grandmas did die in bedrooms. Just like those things happened in those places, so things happen here. You know, this isn't what Marc Auger calls a non-place. It isn't a place of transience. Things actually happen here. It's an anthropological place. It's peopled. And people have rituals and occasions and events. I mean, just in the 6 years that I've been here, I know 3 people who've died. I know that for a fact. I also know one guy who was very, very ill and then went really quiet. So my suspicion is I know a 4th who's died. I know at least one couple that's got married that met here, where we are now, this place. They met here, they got to know each other here, they courted one another here, and they got married. Didn't quite get married here in this environment. You can't actually declare your vows here yet, but nevertheless, all the rest of the stuff happened here, right? People have fallen in love here, people have fallen apart here, just like in real environments. And it is kind of marked with that history. It really is, I feel. But for some reason, that isn't taken seriously. And I think the reason is that we don't really understand online spaces in the same way that we do with real spaces at the moment. We still don't regard these places as having an anthropology, as having as being significant in people's lives, in the same way that the natural world or the built environment out there is relevant in people's lives and plays a part and helps to organise their events. I don't think we realise that yet, but I think we will in retrospect. And I think we'll look back on these times, you know, when a corporation like Google, but other corporations as well, just take it upon themselves to demolish part of a community, or enact massive changes. Just merge this community with this community over here, or just build a freeway that goes right through it, or build a shopping mall next to it without any kind of consultation. I think people will look back on those and think that was a bit insensitive. Well, at the very least, how could people do those things? I'm reminded of a site some of you will undoubtedly know called GeoCities. Do you remember GeoCities? GeoCities used to be one of the really early places you can get web space, like Angel Fire, and there's a few others. You could get a free web space on GeoCities. They put adverts around your page. But for many people, including myself, I think, it was one of the first experiences of having a bit of a foothold in the online environment. There wasn't just text in a message board or something. There was a real kind of page which was yours that you could decorate and do things with and kind of meet people on. This is even before MySpace. And GeoCities had that really kind of city feel to it. It was zoned. You know, I don't know if you... There's an archive of it, which I'll put the link to below. But it was zoned into different areas, and you could be in the artist's colony, or you could be over where the tech people are, the sci-fi people. But I think it was owned by Yahoo. But relatively quickly, they took it upon the company that owned it, which, as I say, I think was Yahoo, just decided to close it down. And they gave a couple of months' notice, and we're going to be closing it in September. And there was uproar. There was uproar amongst the GeoCities communities. You can't do this. We've spent time here. We've made friends here. We've built things here. We live here in some sense. It did eventually close down, and there was a bit of an uproar, as I say, about it. But nothing like the uproar which would accompany the closing down or the removal entirely, or even just a significant change of sites like this one, where people do spend a lot of time, where people see one another die, where babies are raised. I've seen you will do. I've seen stomachs swell on here, and I've seen babies appear in front of the cameras for the first time, and those babies are now 3, 4, 5 years old. So you'll have seen that too. And this is the place where that's kind of been enacted. And the idea that something could just ignore that history, ignore that anthropology, because after all, this is just a business, right? This is just a business. They built Paradise and put up a parking lot. It's just a business. I think that will be looked back on as a shocking insensitivity. But I might be wrong, of course. I might be wrong. But I'd be interested to know what you think. From my kitchen here in Cornwall with the dripping tap. I'll just leave you with that.